Especially at this time of year when we are out and about or trying to spend more time outside. I love having a freezer meal ready to go so that I don't have to spend all day in the kitchen. Tonight for dinner, we are making stuffed shells. And one thing that I always do whenever we make something like this that I know is going to make a ton is turn it into a freezer meal. So I'm giving you my tip here. I repeat, always have these right here on hand. You can get them at the Dollar Tree. They usually come in a 2-pack. So you can get this size, I think comes in a 2-pack. Then there's a round one. The larger round ones come in a 2-pack, the smaller round ones come in a 3-pack. I have round ones in our cabinet as well. We always have these on hand for the sake of if I make too much of something, we can easily turn it into a freezer meal and it's ready to go. So we're gonna make stuffed shells and then we're gonna put it in this freezer container so that we can have this another night as well. All right, friends, you need to start with these jumbo shells. So you can get these in your grocery store. I will tell you that Whole Foods didn't have them. I got them at Publix, but I've seen them in every other grocery store. I'm not sure if Whole Foods was just out, but you need the jumbo size. That's gonna make them easier. Do either that or like a manicotti, something that's easy to stuff. We're gonna get our water boiling over here on the stove top so that we can get these noodles cooked up. They only take about 5 minutes, but the water takes a little while to boil, so we wanna get that started and ready to go. I am using a turkey sausage. Now, 2 reasons. A, because turkey sausage is a little bit less expensive, and B, because I didn't like the way that the pork sausage looked in the grocery store, but feel free to do this. You can also use ground beef. You can also use Italian sausage. There's so many different meats that you can put in this. I've actually made this vegetarian before and done spinach with the ricotta instead of a protein. You can go multiple different ways with this. You could also stuff them with a spinach ricotta and then make a meat sauce for the top. You do it however you want to do it. If you guys have been here for a while, you know that I typically make my own spaghetti sauce or marinara sauce or pizza sauce or whatever you want to call it. I make it the standard way. I've made it several times here on my channel, but we're gonna be using crushed tomatoes. I'm gonna be honest with you, this is not my preference. I think tomato sauce is better for this specific recipe just because of the water content in crushed tomatoes. But that's what we had available, so I got the crushed tomatoes. We're gonna add in some different spices. You guys know I like to add Worcestershire. I like to add Italian seasoning, oregano, parsley, all these different kinds of flavors. I add just a touch of sugar just to cut that acidity of the tomatoes. And then these are no salt added, so I am gonna add a touch of salt into this, and that's it. That's pretty much ready to go. You can add whatever kind of flavors you want in here. Add some onion, add some garlic, add whatever it is that you like. Going to be making up our ricotta mixture. And all right, there are so many different ways that you can go about this. I'm going to empty this entire container of ricotta here into this mixing bowl, and we're going to add a touch of milk just to thin it out. You don't have to do this. Another thing you can actually do is add an egg, and that's gonna kind of help it bind together a little bit. Completely up to you. Like I said, there's so many different ways to do this, but we're just gonna add a touch of milk into this and then some flavor, some Italian seasoning, a little bit of salt and pepper, and then we're gonna add some of this Italian cheese blend. I could have got several different kinds of cheeses, but I thought this was the easy route. I'm just gonna buy this Italian cheese blend. It's got all the different Italian style cheeses in it. And we're just gonna add some of this. So I'm probably adding roughly a half a cup or so, but I'm not measuring this. All right, let's mix all of this together. And then once that turkey sausage is cooked up, we're gonna add it all into this ricotta mixture and stir it all up together. Okay, so now we have the shells, we've got the marinara, we've got the ricotta mixture, everything is set up and ready to go. It's time to stuff those shells. I personally think just going into my utensils drawer and grabbing a spoon is the easiest utensil for this, but you go with whatever you think is best for you. We're just gonna take a spoonful of that and stuff a shell and then put it into a baking dish. Now, depending on how much you want to make, you use whatever size baking dish you want. There's a lot of shells in here. You could easily, I could have easily made a half box of this. Don't feel like you have to make the entire box. So we're just stuffing these and then laying them into the pan. Sometimes they'll lay nice and flat, but the majority of the time they don't. So I end up kind of standing them up a little bit. Totally up to you how you want to lay these in the pan. All right, friends, so we are putting this into the freezer container here, and I'm gonna put that lid on and we're gonna label the top of it. Now, I made a smaller portion of this just because of the amount of ricotta that I had left over from our dinner tonight. So this will actually be perfect for one of those nights when maybe I have worship practice at church or something, so I'm leaving a little bit earlier and it's just my husband and the kids. But if you want to make a lot of this, just double your ricotta mixture and you can make multiple pans to put in your freezer. Let's label this so that it's ready to go. We are going to preheat our oven. We're gonna thaw this out. So we're gonna take it out of the freezer and thaw it out. We're going to preheat our oven for like 350, 375. Remember, everything in here is cooked. It's just heating it through. And we are going to cover it with foil, let it cook for about 30 minutes, then remove that foil and let it cook for about an additional 5 minutes, and it will be ready to go. A good hearty meal from your freezer. You didn't have to do any extra work. For this freezer meal, we are gonna make mini meatloaves, and these freeze so well. You can pull out however many you need from the freezer rather than pulling out a whole meatloaf if maybe you don't need that. Love this idea. All right, so we've got 2 pounds of ground beef here. Use whatever amount of ground beef that you need though. We're gonna add about 3/4 of a cup of oats, and you can also do this with breadcrumbs if that's something that you prefer. Breadcrumbs, panko. We like ours with oatmeal. Now, this is not anybody's specific recipe that I'm following. This is just me having made meatloaf, you know, a million times. And so throwing things in here. We're gonna add in some minced garlic. That's about a teaspoon. I also really like to add in a little bit of onion powder. So I don't know, maybe a little less than a teaspoon, but add the flavors that you love, add more, add less, you know, however you like it. And you can also add onion, obviously. I'm gonna add in some garlic powder. Even though we added in some minced garlic, I just really like to add a little bit of that in. I also really like to add in some Worcestershire. So I'm gonna go with approximately maybe 1.5 teaspoons or so, maybe 2 teaspoons. We really like Worcestershire, so again, add the things that you love. 2 eggs. And I'm gonna start by just mixing this together. We're gonna add a little bit of milk in just a minute, but I'm gonna do a pre-mix to get things going. Now, most of the recipes that I see tell you to add about 3/4 a cup of milk, but I always feel like that's excessive. So we go closer to a half, maybe even closer to a third. I love adding cheese to our meatloaf, so I am going to add some cheese. Feel free to skip that if you need to, or you don't like the idea of having cheese, but it's so delicious. So we're gonna go with right around a cup. Get all of it completely combined. Then we're gonna bring my baking sheet over. I've already lined it with some parchment paper so that it will be ready to go. I like to freeze them on the parchment lined baking sheet. Then I can transfer them to some sort of freezer safe container. That just, to me, it helps it so they don't stick together or anything like that. So I think I'm gonna use about 3/4 of a cup or so per loaf. And it's just easy. I mean, I've got that right there, so I'm just kind of measuring it out. And then form into like a ball shape, and then we will place it onto our baking sheet and turn it into its own little mini loaf. It's so fun when everybody gets their own. I don't know, I just really like the idea. Obviously, you can make one large meatloaf if you want to. I just think this is fun, and it makes it a little different. There are so many recipes for meatloaf, obviously. My friend Mandy has a really good bacon. There's one that has bacon in it, and is it in it or on it? I'm trying to remember, but they're mini meatloaves too. Very, very good. This can go in the freezer and they can freeze individually, and then you can transfer them. Keep this so simple. I do not have measurements for this. I will give you estimations below in the description box. So we're going with some ketchup, and I usually use ketchup that is like a lower sugar. So this one doesn't have corn syrup in it. That's probably around 1/2 cup. I'm gonna add in some Worcestershire, really simple here. I like to add in basically the same ingredients as the meatloaf, a little bit of garlic powder, a little bit of onion powder, and we always add in some brown sugar. So I have my tablespoon measurer here. That's probably about what I'm gonna, maybe a little more. Can mix this together. Now for the sauce that goes on the top of the meatloaf, this is something you could make up, you know, when you take these out of the freezer, and you could make it up. We always have the ingredients for this. The other option is to go ahead and make it up just like this, put it in a little baggie, and then you can just thaw it out in some warm water. So that's another great way to do it if you don't want to have to worry about it later. The seasoning is on point in my opinion. I'm excited about this one. We're gonna start right now by making some baked ziti. And this is one that is so good. It always comes together very, very well. People love it. And I think it's so tasty. Whenever I'm making something like this, I like to get everything prepped and ready to go. I like to prep all of my ingredients, everything, so that it's ready to just assemble into large pans. So we're gonna start by doing that. I'm cooking up this sausage. I've got some sweet Italian sausage and some mild ground sausage. You can use whatever kind you want. You can also use ground beef. You could use a mixture of ground beef and Italian sausage, however you wanna do it. Based on what my grocery store had this week and what was on sale, I decided to go with an all sausage version because it was gonna be a little bit cheaper to go that way. I'm actually cooking up 3 pounds of ziti noodles. We've got 3 pounds boiling, and then I will drain those off and have those ready to go. While our noodles cool down a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and make up our ricotta mixture. Now I have enough that if I feel like I need to make up more, I went ahead and bought an extra one of the ricotta. So we're gonna add in about 3 cups, maybe even 3.5 cups of ricotta to this bowl. And I'm gonna add in 4 eggs. You can go with 3. I'm gonna go ahead and do 4 because this is a little over 3 cups. If you're just using 3 cups, it's basically like an egg per cup. We're also adding in some Parmesan cheese, and I need about 1 cup to 1.5 cups. It might even be a good idea to go ahead and start mixing before you add the Parmesan. I mean, it's not a big deal either way, but you know, just get that started up. And now we will mix all of this together until it's nice and smooth. And this will be another ingredient added into the ziti. While I'm mixing this together, if you want to make this even less expensive, you could go with a meatless version, and that's completely fine. Honestly, like I said, the sausage, I believe it was, when I purchased it, it was actually buy one, get one free. So the sausage ended up being not very expensive at all, which was great. So I was able to make a version with meat in it. But that's one of those things that you can make a great ziti without having any meat at all. So I'm gonna add the sausage back into this pot, and we're gonna make up our sauce. You do not have to make a homemade sauce. You can just buy your favorite pasta sauce, spaghetti sauce, marinara sauce, whatever it is that you love, and use that. I typically make up my own because I actually think that, especially in this kind of case, it can end up being less expensive depending on what your favorite sauce is. And I feel like I can make a ton of it, and it's really easy. It's mostly things that I have on hand as far as spices and stuff go. So I usually just make our own, and we really like the taste of it. To make our sauce, I use a mixture of crushed tomatoes, petite diced tomatoes, and tomato sauce. Those are the 3 tomato bases that I use, and we're gonna be making a lot of this, okay guys? Let's go ahead and add in the can of tomato sauce, which is easy to do because it has the easy open lid. With the petite diced tomatoes, I do usually drain off a little bit just so it doesn't get too watery. I will have a recipe in the description box so that you can click on that and you can adjust it to whatever size you need. I'm making a huge amount. So if I were to give you guys the measurements, it might not even apply to what you're doing, but you can go on and you can change the amount of people that you're making this for. The next thing we always add is Italian seasoning, and I'm gonna be adding a lot because this is a huge amount, okay? You can also add oregano. There is some in the Italian seasoning, but that's up to you. If you really like that flavor, you can add more of it, and I do, so I typically add more. I also add both onion and garlic powder. You can also add onion. You could saute some onion and add that. We are not doing that, but feel free to. That's totally fine. We're also gonna add in some minced garlic, and that might be overkill, but I feel like that really enhances the flavor of this sauce. I also love adding Worcestershire. That's just a preference. You don't have to, but we really like the flavor of Worcestershire. This ingredient is a bit controversial, but feel free to add it if you want. The kitchen is your place to figure out what things you want to add. We're adding a little bit of sugar. It doesn't need too much. It just cuts the acidity a bit. If you really just want to assemble it out of here, that's completely fine. I'm choosing to do it that way. I'm not even going to worry about heating this because it's all going to get heated up. But honestly, I do feel like if you have time, the longer that this sauce simmers on the stovetop, the more those flavors just really come together. So don't be afraid to do that if you have the time. At this point, my goal here is to have some sort of an assembly line so that it is easy to fill our containers. I am using these because we are taking them to, we are actually having a family night dinner at church. So I'm using these so that I can easily transport them, and they fit inside those big sterno things. You can either drizzle your pan with olive oil or you can spray them. Okay, so now we're gonna start adding pasta to our pan. If it's one box of pasta, you wanna do about half of the pasta at the bottom, then you're gonna add some more ingredients, and then you're gonna add the other half into another layer. Now, I have 3 boxes that we're using, so mine's gonna look a little different, not so much half. I think I'm gonna end up with 3 pans of this. We'll see how that goes. And then I'm gonna add sauce on top of here. Now you can just go ahead and combine your sauce and your noodles. I just don't have a bowl big enough to do that, okay? But you're gonna stir together your pasta and your noodles. Okay, so now we're gonna take our ricotta and we're just gonna add it's kind of runny, so you're able to spread it out. You can just add dollops. You don't have to worry about spreading it out or anything. And like I said, I have more ricotta, so I can easily make more. Okay, now we are going to take provolone cheese and we're gonna create a layer of provolone. I think about 6 pieces for this layer. I might add a little more if we end up having it. Fill in any gaps here, making sure we got a good layer of cheese. Now, another layer of pasta. Actually, let me add some sauce into here. I went ahead and combined some of the pasta with the sauce in a separate bowl, just so that we could make sure they get combined and we've got all those flavors. Okay, so we're gonna add more ricotta to this layer. I filled this one pretty full. I might go a little less on the other pans just so that the foil isn't touching the cheese. I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's gonna stick a little bit. You can spray the underside of the foil, but it'll be nice to not have to worry about that too. So you're gonna add foil to this because you are gonna bake it in the oven for about this, honestly, it says 30 minutes, but these are pretty big pans. So probably closer to 45 minutes or so on 375. Then you'll take the foil off and broil them. Also topping this with mozzarella cheese. And there you go. It's basically ready for the oven at this point. We've assembled all of these for church. Now we're gonna make one for a freezer meal. And I find the best way to do this is to wrap it really good with clear plastic wrap first, then wrap it with foil. Now, obviously you need to take that plastic wrap off first before you put this in the oven. And I always like to write on the top of what it is to make sure that it doesn't just stay in my freezer and I have no idea. So I take a permanent marker and write that on the top. All right, we have taken our baked ziti out of the freezer and it thawed out and now it's in the oven. We covered it first for the first 40 minutes and now it's on the broil function so we can get that cheese nice and brown on the top. So we just started that. It's gonna be about 10 more minutes, maybe even 5, and then we will be ready to eat. You guys, this is so delicious. Whether you're taking it out of the freezer and you are baking it later on or you're baking it right away. The flavors are so awesome. It's cheesy. The pasta is perfectly cooked. You've got all these wonderful flavors. It can serve so many people if you need it to, or you can cut it down and serve just a few. I like to top this with a little bit of greenery, some parsley, or maybe even some basil if you have it, just because it makes it so beautiful. But the flavors, you guys, so good. Our verse today comes from 1 Peter 5, 6 through 7. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, I would love if you would subscribe and stick around. Check out the video that I have listed right here in the center of the screen, though. It is going to give you so much encouragement and inspiration in the kitchen. Hope you have a great week.